Hey, Mark Rodriguez here, and we got a special podcast today on Masters of the Universe, the movie, and all the things around it, memories, all that good stuff. So I'm Mark here. We got
This is Jupiter Chan, also known as Ninja Jupiter, or you can call me Wendy, and then we'll turn it over to our special guest.
Well, it's great to be back here on the podcast with Mark and Wendy and everybody. It's always great. Looking forward tonight to talk about Masters of the Universe. Of course, I'm the biggest fan. I'll fight you if you say otherwise. We're going to get into all the hows, whys, wherefores, what's up with the movie, why you should see it, why you should love it. But we got one more guy to talk about and introduce. Before we do that, he's fresh off seeing the movie himself, and I can't wait to hear his thoughts on it. The one and only man of the hour, the Tower of Power, too sweet to be sour, the ball of lightning, Mr. Electricity himself, Johnny Rodriguez.
Johnny Rodriguez.
There he is.
no, we missed you, man. So Johnny, just real quick with you, since you just got home from watching the movie, what were your initial thoughts of it and everything?
Fresh out the box, ooh yeah.
I just like the movie. The very beginning looks very good, very cinematic. Obviously, there's very good effects, but it just looks very convincing, and it's just nice seeing Eternia portrayed in such a I don't know, beautiful way. Like it's a very beautiful landscape you see in the beginning of the film, and then it is quite devastating how Skeletor destroyed all that. So, you get a feel for that. But yeah, that's pretty awesome. It's a very good beginning, and it kind of shows Adam it kind of explaining his origins. That he was from Eternia and his parents and his hometown and all that kind of sort of stuff, and how he's kind of telling it from a storyteller's perspective because he lives now in the real world. He lives in Earth for so many years. So it's kind of like he's trying to, in a way, try to tell people his origins, but in a way that I guess mere mortals like us can understand, And we're still going to look at him like he's crazy.
It can't be helped. I mean, seriously. Yeah, a little skeleton guy attacked your plane, put you through a portal. You had a sword. Yeah, that girl leaving him.
Yeah, he couldn't get a date, and I'm pretty sure he had a lot of rejections,
We'll talk about a lot of the meta-fictional subtext of all of that. There's definitely a lot going on in this movie, but yeah, we'll come back to literally all of that.
So what do you think of once the movie, once Adam actually got back to Eternia and all the characters and all the action, John?
That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool the way it's happened. But another thing that I was starting to have second doubts because when Adam technically in the real world pretty much stole the store from a antique type shop, it's and to the fact where the cops are chasing after him because it's like he stole the sword, public property,
Well, it's a little bit outside of their jurisdiction now, I would say. I don't think he's really got to worry about that. Plus, he is a prince, and his mother is from Earth, and and she carries royal sovereignty on Eternia. So yeah, he has full diplomatic immunity. So there's absolutely nothing anybody can do about it. That sword is his because he said so. I mean, I don't make the rules. That's just what the rules are. He's fine.
Yes, I'm just saying, in retrospect, back then when nobody knew the details of all that, it just looked like, what the hell is this guy is just stealing this damn sword? And I was starting to have second guess, I hope this sword is real because he just.
Guy, got me. He just walked out the job, and for all he knew, it could have been a guy trolling him or a guy trying to sell a fake sword or something.
Don't go toward that phone. Don't go toward that phone.
Yeah, he quit his job. He quit his job to get that sword. So it's like, it better be the real sword.
It was a big gamble on his part, but you know what they say: you miss every swing you don't take, and I definitely, for his sake, hoped that it was, and we know how it turns out, obviously. But yeah, I'm sitting there thinking the same thing. That's a pretty bold move, but
$300 for the sword, and so and then he goes there and says, "Oh, it's a fake sword."
Now,
the girl was still like, Are you single?
Not because the guy was telling him the sword's in this location. So who is the guy in question? How did he knew about the sword?
I'm actually willing to bet that there's going to be some more stuff in the deleted scenes of the Blu-ray coming out, which I can't wait to get the 4K. I'm already all in on that. But one thing I did hear is that Travis Knight, he kind of pulled a Zack Snyder. He shot a 3-hour movie with this, and he cut it down to 2.25. It is kind of a longish movie for what we're used to nowadays, but so supposedly a lot of the scenes are extended, and there's a little bit more meat on the bone. I know Mossman gets a whole fight scene that's cut from the theatrical. You don't
Wait,
see it.
you said Mossman?
Mossman, yeah.
He really did. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
God. That makes a whole lot of sense, though.
Yeah, there's a whole big fight scene. I think it's him and Triclops, I want to say.
Oh, yeah.
And-
Cyclops also had a smaller role, but considering.
Yeah. And there's some scenes of Adam getting arrested on Earth that are a little longer. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to be right on the disc. But, I'm pretty hopeful that we get a little bit more explanation about the mystery guy with the sword making the deals. But I will say, for $300, that's a heck of a deal because, I'm a little bit of an expert on what it takes to find one of these. And it was a little more than $300. This isn't one of the newer ones, by the way. This is, I forget where my wife got it from, but I'm sure you guys could see that.
Mm-hmm.
That is 36-inch blade, stainless steel. Absolutely ready for any kind of action. Leather grip. This is a beauty. And can't thank her enough for that. That was a birthday present from a couple years ago. I know it was not $300. I know that, but yeah. So that's a beauty right there. So
Hey, I'm still waiting for my Master Sword.
Uh-huh.
Master Sword. I'm still waiting.
Yeah, the check's in the mail for that. But
Okay.
anyway,
I wasn't heartbroken when we couldn't get the drink cup sword. They had it, but it was like, not everything happens. We did get the Grayskull snack tray. That was badass. They got that set up on a shelf with the little mini mates figures. Real awesome stuff. Yeah, so it's been a heck of a ride. Why don't we talk a little bit about our history or not? Because I know we all have various experience with Master Universe. I'll go last because I probably have the biggest story, and I'm like that. But yeah, let's talk about what brought us here, because I'm sure we all have at least a passing familiarity with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Everyone does. But let's talk about what brought us here and what brought us to the movie and all of that good stuff.
Well, can I go first? Because I probably have the least.
yeah.
Because me, I was more in the She-Ra. So anyway,
You can't have one without the other. They're like the Rockers, one without the other isn't any good.
well, for me with He-Man, because I'm younger, but I had to watch it because of my older cousin. So he has like 5 years on me, and he had control of the TV. And like I said, little 4 or 5-year-old can't beat up a 9 or a 10-year-old. It's just not gonna happen. So anyway, so he had control of the TV. So when He-Man was on, I had to watch it because he was watching it. I didn't care for He-Man. It's like I didn't dislike it, but I didn't. It's like I liked it but didn't dislike it. It was like it was fun to watch sometimes, but I didn't want to admit that because then when She-Ra came out, I would argue with him and say, well, She-Ra is better because She-Ra's for girls. He-Man's for boys. And She-Ra's cooler because she has the pony. And he has wings. I don't like his voice, but he has wings. But I don't know. I liked He-Man for what it was. It was a fun little show, but my memories are so hazy of it because of how I was watching it. It was very sporadic, and I watched He-Ra a lot more because I saw that more frequently than I did He-Man. But the main thing I remember about He-Man in general are action figures, honestly. I remember commercials way more than I do some things from the show. Like I'm seeing the characters in the movie, and I'm like, okay, I remember that character from the show, and I remember that character from a commercial. And throughout the entirety of the movie, the only thing in my mind was action figures sold separately. Seriously,
Those commercials were insane. I still like to watch them on YouTube sometimes just for fun. I remember seeing them 5, 6 times a day, every day. Those commercials were mind blowing. I mean, people who weren't there wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
See, my memory's hazy, but I do remember commercials for for the He-Man toys, like a lot. I remember them more than I do She-Ra ones, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked it. And I
Well,
did see
they
the
didn't
He-Man
really-
She-Ra special and all that stuff. So I never had toys or anything for the He-Man line, but my cousin did from the little bit I do remember because he was such a big fan of it. And that's about all my He-Man thing. But I was interested in the movie kind of mainly because Mark here was. And I said, you know what? I'll go see it. You know, I'm curious. And I never saw the original 80s version of the movie either. I remember it. I remember it existing, but not the interest where I was asking my parents to go see it, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But I had to have seen it because I remember most of the plot point to me that I had to have seen it, or even parts of it, maybe like on TV at some point. Especially that ending, because that ending I remember.
I'll
I
tell you
had to have
this.
seen it somewhere.
They used to show that movie a lot from like 89 to 92. It used to be on regular TV, not even cable. It used to be on like where I lived in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania area. They used to play it on Channel 11 on the weekends all the time. Like all the time. I got a taped copy off of Channel 11. Try to cut around the commercials, all that good stuff. So yeah, everybody probably at least has seen half of it by surfing through channels, if nothing else. If they never actually sat down and watched it, it's one of those movies that you just, like I didn't see Caddyshack. I didn't sit down and watch it until like 5 years ago, but I've seen parts of it because everybody has, right? It's like one of those kind of movies.
Same here with me. I didn't see Caddyshack fully until maybe about 10 years ago or so. But yeah, I had seen bits and pieces over the years. But yeah, but like I said, He-Man was fun as a kid. Because like I said, I ain't gonna lie, I did have fun arguing with my cousin about it. But in hindsight, I really did like teasing and all that. But yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was. And it was a nice little fun thing. And I did think Skeletor was funny.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what Giant's gonna remember because I mean he was super young with that stuff. I remember watching the cartoons. I remember that was our very first action figure line that we got into and everything. And I remember that the first ones we ever got, mom and dad got for Christmas was Battle Armor He-Man and Battle Armor Skeletor.
Oh,
Because they were already out the time. It was already too late for the original wave, but we got them. And offhand, I remember we had Mechaneck, like Johnny remember, we had Mechaneck, we had Buzz Off, we had oh boy, it's been a while. Oh, we had Manny Faces, no, we never maybe we had Trapjaw,
Yeah,
maybe.
Manny Faces make sense and
Trapjaw, I don't remember 50-50, I don't remember. I know we had Roboto, we had
Beastman.
maybe Beastman.
I mean, I'm sorry, it seemed like they were just so prominent in the show.
Yeah, but we also got them a bit late, so we're getting like the more newer ones, the newer people start coming out and everything.
One thing that's that it needs to be really pointed out and remembered is that back then, with the way toy stock was rotated and stuff like that, and especially with a line like this, where the point was every 3 months to get another set of new characters on the shelves, unless you lived close to a place like, for us, it was Myers in East Brunswick. It was like a discount outlet. So when Toys R Us and Kmart, when they had stuff still left over, when the new waves came in, they shipped it 5 minutes down the road to the discount store. So if you got lucky, you could still find the 85 figures into 86 if you knew where to look. But otherwise, if you were just going to the big stores, those old characters were out of there every 3 months. So if you missed them, you missed them. And
Yeah, the very first wave was like He-Man, Skeletor, Tila, Man-at-Arms, Trapjaw, Beastman, Evil Lyn, like those. But then, like you said, once they're gone, they're gone. And now they start bringing all the other newer characters. But they kept making variants of He-Man and Skeletor, so it would always be at least some new version of He-Man and Skeletor. But the other characters were all like,
Yeah, like a lot of the big ones I missed as a kid. Like I didn't have Merman until I got my pandemic money a couple years ago. I bought almost
Merman. Okay, I remember him. He put something in my head.
Yep. I dressed up as Merman for Halloween once, back when I was, I guess, 10 or something.
When I was 5, I got one of those stupid Halloween smock costumes with the plastic eyes. He-Man when I was 5.
Which
Yeah.
one?
I was just He-Man. I
Oh,
had those stupid costumes with the plastic mask and the fucking rubber band and the
yeah,
little.
yeah, those. But I was Merman. Those like just like you described. That
Yeah.
was funny. And let me see here. So, let me see. So whenever I remember going to the bigger, fancier toy stores. Rare moments they had like Modulok in them and newer vehicles and all
Oh
that
man, that
stuff.
was one of the best
So,
Christmas presents
so,
I ever got. When I got Modulok, I was at my grandmother's house and we were all
oh,
opening presents. And they got me Modulok. I was freaking out, man. And then
yeah,
later on, they had Multibot, so you could make a fucking multi-beast with all the Modulok and Multibot parts. That shit was off the hook.
yeah. And then one of the Christmases, I got King Hiss. Johnny got Tongue Lasher,
Two.
and then we got Gwildor from the movie, and then we got those little orbs, like dinosaur orbs or something.
9 orbs, yeah.
Those are
Yeah, I
probably
didn't
like
get
the
any.
last ever things we got, I think, from that series and everything. And the movie
That's what it
came
was.
out. We wanted to go see it. Our dad was like, I don't know, that's too violent. I don't know, that kind of stuff. But we kept pestering him like Dad, but it's He-Man. It's whatever. It's awesome, that's okay, fine. We go see the movie, but don't come back to me. We all got nightmares. I better not be hearing about you getting nightmares and all that.
I mean, Sorod was pretty badass. I mean, I got to tell you, um, well, actually, Johnny didn't speak yet on his experience, his past. You spoke for him a little bit, but Johnny, what do you remember? I know whatever you remember of it, even if it's,
So
and then I'll
it,
go.
I remember it's going to be extremely murky, but living in the household where my brother lives, and we would be watching Masters of the Universe all the time. I always recognize it as just He-Man. Like, hey, just watch He-Man. I think that
That's what
most people,
everybody.
yeah. But in actuality, it's Masters of the Universe, and they just play it so many times on TV. It's like you kind of get a glimpse of here or there, and then of course, kind of like when the situation like She-Ra came out, and then you also watch that, and you kind of watch back to back He-Man one day, She-Ra the next day. Like it's kind of like, okay, cool. I kind of like both series. They both have their uniqueness, but He-Man is always going to be more known. I think he was just much more. It was much more commercialized. It's more known compared to She-Ra. I think She-Ra, like, it's so good,
It's kind
but
of like a Blink 182 kind of situation. Everybody knows them because that's where it started, right? And then Tom went and did Angels and Airwaves, which is this far superior band. They play much better music technically, but they're never going to be as recognized as Blink 182 because that's what everybody knew first, right? So it's kind of the same thing with He-Man and She-Ra. She-Ra was made a little bit later, and it was technically a little bit better show because they had a little bit more advanced
Mhm.
techniques and a little bit more money to spend. But people were always going to look at it as like He-Man and She-Ra. It's never going to be given its full, which is, it is what it is. But yeah,
I
Well,
like
the other thing
She-Ra
too
show because I
is,
think they have more characters in the program.
yeah,
they
and then the
have
other
a.
thing is that when it comes to the toy line, Hordak and his people, and then the Snake Man, they came out so late that the He-Man show tended to be over. It was just, it was reruns on TV, but there were no new episodes made. So they took advantage of She-Ra to put the Horde on there and make the Snake Man appear and all them. And
Well, also there was a little bit to that where they needed stronger villains for the She-Ra cartoon because if you are unfortunate enough to look at the earliest mini comics, because just like the He-Man toys, the She-Ra toys came with comics, and there was a
mm,
couple story books, and they were horrible. They were really horrible because back then, before the cartoon, they hadn't fully finalized it yet, and it was really just a straight up Barbie kind of riff. It was like Barbie with a sword, and that's all it was. So the stories, Catra was the villain, and the
yeah.
story really
Wait,
like a
Catra.
Catra,
cat.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So stories would be like Shira and Glimmer and Flutterina and whoever. They'd be like having a picnic by the lake, right? And Catra is jealous she wasn't invited, so she tries to spoil their picnic by splashing them with water. And Adora would run behind a tree, flip her headdress upside down into a mask, and come back with her sword and be like, "Hey, I'm Shira. Get out of here, Catra. How dare you spoil our picnic?" And she'd splash Catra with water, and she'd be like, "Nah, you guys suck anyway." And she'd go off to pout. And then the girls would go back having their picnic, and that was the story. So Filmation looked at that and they're like, we can't make a cartoon out of this. So
Yeah.
they basically just decided to do He-Man with a girl, and it worked a lot better, I would say. But they needed strong villains, and as you said, the He-Man show wasn't in production by the time the Horde came out. So they're like, hey, why don't we make Hordak the She-Ra villain? And have Catra work for Hordak, because that just works a lot better. And they came up with the story of Etheria being enslaved by the Horde and Adora having been brainwashed and the whole thing. You know, that wasn't the original lore. The original lore was basically just Barbie with a sword, and it was horrible. So, just like the earliest He Man stuff, they had an idea, they got away from it really quickly, and what they ended up coming up with was way better for everybody, I would think. Because we all love She-Ra. I don't know if we would love She-Ra if they stayed with the original stories before they gave her Hordak and all that stuff, you know? I have.
I know for a fact that that would have bored me to tears, even as a, even as being as a young girl and all that. I think that would have been boring to me. But then again, who knows? Just seeing a girl with a sword and just fighting or something, that would have been cool to me. I don't know.
It's
But
like I'm a collector. I have the books. I have the comics. I collect as much of everything as I can. My wife got me the hardcover that collects all the mini comics from the
Oh,
He-Man all the way up to She-Ra and even New Adventures in '89. And
oh,
yeah, the She-Ra mini comics were terrible. Just absolutely not good at all. And so thank God for Filmation. They really nailed it when they put the final spin on what that character was. But so I guess I'll go back to the beginning. With me, I was literally born in '82 when the toys came out. I was born September of '82. My father would have got me into it because he bought the toys and he did buy me other stuff. There was a lot of stuff in the '80s that was popular. I remember having like Crystar and the Crystal Warriors. I had some Jason Wheeled Warriors toys. There was some DC figures as well, obviously. But He Man would have probably been the first toy line that I was given to fall in love with, and I always preferred that over everything. And my dad, he had a pretty good job back then, so he got me at least a couple new figures every week, and he never got me the same one. He was so good with that. He always kept track of which ones I had. And like you said, Mark, the first ones I would have had, he probably got me the Battle Armor He-Man with Battle Cat 2-pack. I'm almost positive because he would have
wow.
gotten me a lot of those 2-packs and gift sets. And I know I had Battle Armor Skeletor. I didn't have regular Skeletor, unfortunately, until a couple of years ago. I had the Battle Armor ones. I missed the original basic He-Man figures, so Battle Armor would have been my default growing up. I was able to get one later on, but I ended up having, by the time I ended the line in 1987, I had at least 3/4 of the entire line. Almost every figure, except for like maybe 15 or 20 at most. They did like 80 figures. I had most of them by 1988. I had almost every vehicle. I had Castle Grayskull, Snake Mountain, the Fright Zone, the Slime Pit. I had all the playsets except for Eternia. Nobody had Eternia except the rich kids, the Three Towers and
Oh,
everything.
yeah, yeah, I remember that one.
I couldn't even get the one Mattel put out a couple years ago on their website. I missed that. I'm gonna end up paying like $1,000 for that someday, but I gotta get it. But yeah, my dad was so generous with that. He got me into the toys, and actually, for a fact, since today is a special occasion, as you can see, I got some of the toys from the new movie behind me. I got some of the Core and the Chronicles. I really love the new toys. Everything Mattel's been putting out is
Yeah,
great.
put them towards the camera, man.
For today, I got something extra special from my actual childhood
Oh,
collection.
wow.
My original He-Man and Battle Cat. This would have been a 82 or 83 Battle Cat, and the He-Man is an 87.
Mm.
So I had to piece together the accessories online, and I'm pretty sure that sword's a reproduction, but I don't care. This is the He-Man. The sword, the axe I know is authentic. I had the axe since I was a kid, and the shield I think is authentic. The sword might be a reproduction, but yeah, this is the Battle Cat that my dog chewed on when I was 5, so it's got a little what I call battle damage on the armor, but I'm never going to replace it because those are awesome memories. So yeah, I've had this my whole life, and so I had to break it out here today. I haven't reviewed it for my toy channel yet, but I will someday. But yeah, I had to bring that out for tonight. So if anybody would doubt my credentials, they better not, because I've been with this stuff since the very beginning. Put this guy back. So yeah, well, I stay on top of the toys to this day. But back then, I was so immersed in it. It was my favorite as a kid. The only thing that came close would have been Real Ghostbusters. This is a great toy line as well. But yeah, for me, what really made the toys stand out, because it was a toy line, despite all the awesome stuff that came later, it was about the toys first and foremost. And to me as a kid, you go to Toys R Us and you had the Star Wars toys and you had the G.I. Joe toys, and they were in their like 3.5, 3 3/4 inch scale, even the DC stuff. And they were cool, but they were small, And then right next to them on the shelf, there was He-Man and Skeletor and Beastman and Man-at-Arms, and they were huge. They were 5.5 inches tall with giant muscles and armor and swords and ray guns. And it was like, for me, as a 3-year-old, I could get the little G.I. Joe guy with the parachute, or I could get the big, giant, muscle-bound guy with the giant sword and the big-ass laser rifle. I mean, to me, it was obvious what my $5 was going to go for, right?
Yeah.
Not knocking anybody else, because those other toy lines were awesome too. But as a kid who couldn't have every single thing, I was trying my best to have every single thing that was He-Man and Masters of the Universe, and I still do. I'm so grateful for Mattel for the Origins line, the Masterverse line, for the movie, the Core and Chronicles. I'm trying to stay on top of it as best I can. It gets a little tough because there's so much of it, but yeah, it's been a gift, because you remember He-Man, they stopped it in 87. She-Ra kept going into 88 because it was already in production and all that. But then they stopped. They did New Adventures in 89. That didn't take off. And then we had nothing for the longest time until 2003, right? And then we had that. That reboot was real good, but it didn't
It was
really.
fun.
I loved it, but it didn't really catch for a lot of folks. But then, it wasn't that long ago. We had all these dead years with no toys, no merch. And then, the last 5 years, ever since the pandemic and everything, which was a hell of a time to launch a toy line, I got to tell you. But that's when Origins came out. And it's been like, since then, we've got literally hundreds of figures. So much more now than we did in the 80s. It's incredible. I can't get over it. Around my house, and I'm surrounded by it more than I was as a kid. It's incredible. So we did go see the movie in 87, which was kind of like the swan song for the original line, because it was winding down. And the movie was pretty much the bullet because it wasn't very well received. But my dad took me. I was just about 4.5 years old, and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic then, even though it wasn't like the cartoon at all. But I don't know. In my head, it was really easy to just look at it like an alternate adventure, maybe like a future few years after the cartoon type adventure where everything's gone bad, It plays kind of like a final He-Man story in a lot of ways. It was actually, the original movie was based on Jack Kirby's Fourth World, if you didn't know. So, like the Cosmic Key stuff, those were boom tubes, and Skeletor was Darkseid and all of that. That's why He-Man's got a big red cape, is because he's like a Superman stand-in. If you know comics, if you know comic books,
kind of.
if you know Jack Kirby's Fourth World with the new gods, and then you go back and watch the 87 Masters of the Universe movie, it's totally different when you get what the guy was actually writing about. The guy who wrote it, he was like, I knew they were never going to let me do the new gods movie, so I just did it with He-Man characters, and that's why that movie is so awesome.
Also, Skeletor had pretty much what looked like Star Wars stormtroopers working for him.
Yeah, I mean, they did what they could with the money. Canon Films, they had very little money, and they spent half of it on Superman 4 that year, which was also, that was like legitimately a bad movie. Master Universe isn't a bad movie, the 87 one. It's a great movie. It's just a cheap movie. They had no money to make it, but for what they did great. I think you just have to not compare it to the cartoon. That's what we have the new movie for. But I remember when I was 4 years old, and my dad walked with me out of the movie theater. He loved it as much as I did. He used to watch the cartoon with me. He bought me every toy. He was excited in 2003 when it all came back. He would have been just as excited now. He would have gotten the biggest kick out of it. He loved He-Man for some reason, which was weird. It wasn't like his.
A movie called Cyborg that was supposed to be the sequel to Masters of the Universe, but then it got retooled and became what Cyborg became. It was like a Jean-Claude Van Damme film, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that was based on the script for the second movie, so it's obviously good they didn't technically get to make the second movie. They did shoot the script. You know, they in most of the world it's just called Cyborg with Van Damme, but I've seen it on like the Spanish channels. I forget what they called it, but around here everybody just called it the Spanish channel. Where they would
I call it Cyborg con tacos or something.
on the on those channels it was called Masters of the Universe 2, the Cyborg, but
Oh,
only
wow.
like only in certain parts of the world and only on certain channels. Otherwise, it was just called Cyborg. But yeah, it has nothing to do as is with the first movie. It was just very, very strange situation. But yeah, it was a great time as a kid. I was upset more people didn't like it, but so I think we all wish we could have had something a little bit closer to the original, comics and cartoons. But now forward to 40 years later, and here we are.
Hey Johnny, how did you when you went to see the '80s version of the movie, the Dolph Lundgren? What do you have any memories about that one?
I remember is they were eating fried chicken at KFC.
Well, it was Robbie's ribs, but
Yeah. Well, I was a kid, so I just thought, oh, damn, they got some good chicken there, you know?
That was the weird thing because they were. Cause,
I'm sorry. Even back then, Johnny was focused on the food.
yeah, yeah. The funny thing is, like, it was like supposed to be like a joke because they're like not from Earth or whatever, and they're getting the ribs, and Tila's all like, "How did you put this meat on these bones?" And it's like, well, from an animal. We're eating some kind of animal. I'm kind of like, okay, so what do you eat on Eternia, and how do you know what meat is if you don't eat that stuff in Eternia? Like,
yeah, that joke didn't really land. They didn't really think that one through. But I do to this day. I constantly say, "Never think while you're hungry."
yeah, yeah, that was his
That
response. It's like we're eating some kind of animal. Hey, never think when you're hungry. And he keeps eating.
I
He's
say
like,
that to somebody at least once a week.
hmm.
I'm a big eater, so.
Oh,
But
Johnny,
yeah,
what did you think of that of Dolph
The
Lundgren's little
80s
cameo
movie? Oh, I loved it. I loved it. But going back to the 80s movie, I liked it for what it was back then. It did feel a little bit of a lackluster because it's not entirely based on the cartoons. So it was more confusing than anything else. But for its time, it was still an interesting movie. It was so cool. It was still, you're seeing the Masters of the Universe, you're seeing He-Man, you're seeing Tita, you're seeing all the characters.
yeah,
I thought it was a little
I, I,
scary.
I think the
The effects
important
are pretty good, though, I have to say.
I think the important thing is, like you said, everybody is recognizably behaving as the characters you recognize to a point. Everybody's dressed a little different. The music's a little different. The costumes and the weapons are a little different. But everybody, to me, even if 4 years old,
Mhm.
And
that's
then one
man,
thing I can relate,
that's Tila.
one thing I can relate from the old movie to the new movie is that what year was the original one? The 86, right?
7. They came out in 80. They
In
shot it in 80.
87?
86
Oh
or
yeah, the
86?
original 87, right? You said? Yeah, the original 87 movie, it's in the 80s, so the movie's gonna be 80s style, when they go to the real world. And then in this new movie, it's like the 2026 edition of that, because when he mentioned the real world, he's in the real world. He's going to dating apps. He's working at a corporate office job, and working in the HR department, and learning how to talk to people, and all this like very modern stuff. That
There's a lot going on in that movie.
yeah, there's a lot of very like modern reference to this movie. So I kind of relate to how the old movie felt very 80s-ish, and how this new movie feels very like with the times, like right now, 2026.
Very
I love
self. It works on a lot of levels. It's a very, very.
I love that.
It's a very intelligent movie for intelligent fans of a franchise. It's a little bit more sophisticated than I think people give it credit for. Um, you know, I've always had to defend this franchise. I shouldn't have to, but I always have had to. I've never understood why anybody wouldn't like Masters of the Universe because it's literally everything that's cool. It's got fantasy, it's got swords and sorcery, Dungeons and Dragons, science fiction. It was originally conceived almost as a straight up Conan the Barbarian type of story, but then they added elements of Star Wars to it, and it only enriched it and made it even more fantastical and mysterious. So you've got that's always been the appeal, I think, of Masters of the Universe, is that you get all of those things together. You get the epic fantasy, Lord of the Rings style, and then you get the other end where you've got, you know, laser rifles and spaceships and, you know, threats from other planets and intergalactic conquest, and you get all of that together, and it's this amazing hybrid. I think that's why some of the other things like the 1989 New Adventures series, I think that's why it didn't land a lot with older fans, was because they took all the fantasy elements out of it and they just made it like Star Wars, which was on purpose. Star Wars was done by then, and it was dormant, but people recognized there were toys to sell and cartoons to make in that space for kids who liked the idea of space fantasy, right? So that was what New Adventures of He-Man was all about, was making a new Star Wars for a new generation. And on that level, New Adventures of He-Man works fantastically well. It's a good show. It's just a bad follow-up to the original He-Man because it's nothing like it. And you separate the fantasy from the Star Wars parts, and it's like it's almost not He-Man anymore. That's why I kind of squint at some of the people who want to go all the way back to the very, very beginning, where it was just like a wandering barbarian who pulled the sword out of the rock and beat up the bad guy. And it was like that for the first like 4 mini comics, but then it completely into something much better. So I kind of squint when people were like, oh, I liked it better when it was just that early comic, because it was like there's no texture to that. There's no real substance to that. There's nothing about Masters of the Universe that makes it identifiable as itself. I've always made the joke of how can you not love a franchise where the bad guy is just a bad guy and you know he's a bad guy because he's got a skull for a fucking head. It doesn't need to be complicated. And he's also a warlock, and that's awesome too. And people say they don't like this stuff. I'm like, what the hell is the matter with you? Like, I don't get it. Like, how could you not get it? I mean, it's beyond me how anybody couldn't get it. It's always been my favorite thing. And my cousin too, actually, she was my cousin Heather. She was a big She-Ra fanatic, so we'd run around the backyard with our swords, and by the power of Grayskull, for the honor of Grayskull, we'd watch the cartoons, the Secret of the Sword movie. I didn't get to see that in theaters, unfortunately. That would have been fun.
I saw it later.
Yeah, I saw it on TV.
Yeah, I mean, like Johnny said, we would grow up. I would watch the cartoons multiple times every day. I'd wake up and they'd be on first thing in the morning before breakfast. They'd usually have like an hour block. It would either be 2 episodes of He-Man or later on a He-Man and then a She-Ra. Or sometimes some channels would do 2 and 2. They do like a 2-hour block, depending. Most people, they argue about when it aired, but if you lived in a certain area, like I got to see it every single day. It'd be on 7 days a week. It would mostly be on weekday mornings and afternoons, also early evenings around 7:30. But also, where I lived on the weekends, you could pull it in from the Philadelphia syndicated stations.
Like WGN?
Yeah, we got that stuff over here. So I was lucky enough to watch He-Man and She-Ra, both of them, every single day, 7 days a week. And then I would read the golden books or the comic books, and I would play with my action figures all weekend long. They'd be spread out in the living room. I had all the play sets. I had most of the figures.
And don't forget the magazine, He-Man Masters Universe quarterly magazine.
They had a magazine?
Yeah.
I just last year went out and I bought a complete run of those, mint condition, except very final issue. I spent hundreds. But that's what it costs. The She-Ra ones are even worse. You're looking at like $200 per issue because they didn't make as many of them. But I'll get those eventually someday too. But man, I had those as a kid too. I ripped the posters out and put them on my wall like a dummy, so I lost all that stuff. But I have the new ones now, complete with posters, worth every penny I spent on them because they're pristine. One of them even has the fucking wrapping paper.
Oh wow, I remember that for the holiday one.
Yeah, you get all excited. You're like, oh, He-Man wrapping paper. It's like, oh, it's the size of actually 2 paper towels. But it's got He-Man on it, so